Should I tell a little story about him? Yes, I think I shall. We were on the same flag football team in seminary. And I was a quarterback, and I mainly played defensive line. He's not really built for land travel. But we did have this one trick play that we did at the end of the first half of the game, where we came to the line, and that I think it was maybe even Caroline's wife was on the far sideline, and before we kind of got set, she just like stepped off the field, and then when like nobody was watching on the other team, Craig came onto the field on the other side, and then we snapped the ball, and he just ran down. He was totally wide open, and I just completely outthrew him, like way over his head, because, like I said, he doesn't have that very long legs. But the referee was so mad at us. He threw this flag, and he was just, I remember this guy, his name was Mark, and he came running, screaming at me, like foaming at the mouth with a red face. And I'm like, dude, what's up? He's like, what was that? He was screaming, and I said, that was a trick play. He's like, there are no trick plays. This is seminary. So, I have a lot of experience actually being a sports official. One of the ways I worked my way through seminary was I was a baseball umpire. And it's a great way. I really enjoyed it. And I was a baseball umpire for about 20 years. And it was a pretty good one. Like, I had a lot of fun. Did a lot of Southern California baseball. And I remember I saw my first 90-mile-an-hour fastball doing a California high school like state tournament semifinal game. And it was an incredible experience, especially because there were like a dozen college and pro scouts with radar guns right behind me. I think the first pitch came in, and I was like, I just froze. I hadn't even seen a 90-mile-an-hour fastball before. And so it took me a minute to kind of calibrate myself and figure out if I was going to call it a strike or not. Well, this is an interesting thing about baseball. Unlike any other sport, baseball, the rule book of baseball is sacred. Like, there are people who have memorized the entire baseball rule book. It's super important to them. And as an umpire, you have to do it. And it's different. Every sport has their rule books, but there are purists about the baseball rule book. And so, one of the rules that you have to know is Rule 2.00, which is the strike zone. And that's this rule right here. The strike zone is that area over home plate, the upper limit of which is a horizontal line at the midpoint between the top of the shoulders and the top of the uniform pants. And the lower level is a line at the hollow beneath the kneecap. The strike zone shall be determined from the batter's stance as the batter is prepared to swing at a pitch ball. There it is, black and white, right? Very clear what the strike zone is. But here's the interesting thing. If you look at a graphic about what the strike zone actually is in Major League Baseball, it's not that. So I think it's the next slide. Oh no. That guy never misses. I think it's the next slide. See the official strike zone from the rule book? The official strike zone is what's in blue. The midpoint from the top of the shoulders to the top of the uniform pants, the midpoint between those two spots. And the bottom of the strike zone is the hollow at the bottom of the player's knee. Now, if you remember the Naked Gun movie, remember when he goes out and he's like, when he's frisking the guy at home plate or whatever, he frisks all the, remember that? Anybody? Way before your time? Thank you. So how do you know where the hollow at the bottom of the player's knee is? You can't go like feel where the hollow at the bottom of his knee is. And what's the batter's stance when he's ready to swing at a pitch ball? Because, you know, every batter has a different stance, and batters change their stances. So already you can see there's some room for interpretation, even in the baseball rule that's in black and white, Rule 2.00 about what is the strike zone. Here's the other interesting thing about the strike zone, as you see in this graphic. It has moved over time. The rule book has not changed. They have not amended the rule book to change Rule 2.00 on what is the strike zone. They've left it the same. But over time, it has shifted low and outside. And there are several reasons for that. One of the reasons is that umpires used to wear those big balloon outside chest protectors, and they would stand right over, they would just stand like this right over the catcher's head. And they would have their eyes basically right at the top of that strike zone. But then when umpires, like technology improved, and umpires have these inside chest protectors now under their shirts, they have to crouch down a lot lower, and they go into this place called the slot that's right like between the head and the shoulder of the catcher on either side. So now the umpire's eye level is a little lower, and the strike zone starts to come down. And guys used to throw in the major leagues, they used to maybe throw 70, 75 mile an hour, 80 mile an hour fastballs. Now, there are guys who can throw 96 mile an hour fastballs. And for someone to get hit by a 96 mile an hour fastball is obviously a bad deal. And so in order to protect batters, you just can't even get your bat around fast enough, right? On a 96 mile an hour fastball. So what's happened is the strike zone has moved to the outside. So umpires don't give as many inside pitches because it's dangerous, and that they penalize pitchers basically for throwing too close to batters. But in order to not have the games go on forever and ever and ever and keep the strike zone about the same size, umpires will give half an inch on the outside of the plate. So it's changed. The strike zone has changed. In like about 2003, all Major League umpires were told by the commissioner that they had to go around spring training and tell every Major League team, we are going back to calling the strike zone as it is in the rule book. We're going to be Pharisees about Rule 2.00. It's going back to the blue. They went around spring training, they told all the teams this. And by All-Star, and it was kind of big news and everything. Oh, they're going to bring the strike zone back up, and can anybody even hit a 96 mile an hour fastball that's at the top of the strike zone? Basically the top of the strike zone is about the belt now. So they tried moving it up and moving it back inside, and almost every baseball writer in America agreed that by the All-Star break, it was back to the actual de facto working strike zone. The entire community of baseball, the fans shouting, the managers jawing from the dugout, the umpires, the batters, the catchers, everybody is in it together. They take that Rule 2.00 and they interpret it so that it actually works with a 96 mile an hour fastball, because that rule book was not written when anybody could throw a 96 mile an hour fastball. So, the next slide you'll see an umpire, I think, right? This is an old story of one of the most famous baseball umpires of all time. So here's how the story goes. Clem, the most famous umpire in the early 20th century. He's behind the plate. The pitcher winds up, throws the ball. The pitch comes, the batter doesn't swing. Clem, for an instant, says nothing. The batter turns around and says, okay, so what was it, a ball or a strike? And Clem says, Sonny, it ain't nothing till I call it. And then here's a continuation of that quote from a philosopher who says, what the batter is assuming is that balls and strikes are facts in the world, and that the umpire's job is to accurately say what each pitch is. But in fact, balls and strikes come into being only upon the call of the umpire. So in other words, a ball or a strike is an event that happens, and the umpire, on behalf of the community of baseball, makes a judgment at that moment about whether that pitch is a ball or a strike. Some of them, the umpire gets wrong, right? In our opinion, the umpire gets wrong. Hey, what are you doing, Blue? Aren't you watching the game? You need a new pair of glasses? Or the batter turns around, or the catcher, if a pitch comes in and it's just on the outside corner and the umpire doesn't call it, if you're a student of baseball, you see, the catcher will just hold it there for an extra second. Just to the limit where he might be about to show up the umpire. He's just letting the umpire know, I think that pitch was a strike. That was really close, right? This is all the language that happens. So there's this old proverb about three different kinds of umpire. The first umpire says, I call them as they are. The second umpire says, I call them as I see them. And the third umpire says, they ain't nothing until I call them. Well, here's how that relates to what I want to say to you today about what it means to be a Christian in today's world. Dave Lemley asked me to speak about using what it means to use theological reasoning. And what I do, my PhD's in theology, and what I do is I write theology and I think about theology, and I'll be talking to hopefully some of you this weekend on a retreat about theology and spirituality. Here's my primary thesis that I want to say to you today. There is no biblical answer to whatever question you're asking. There's no biblical solution to your problem. The big issue on the front page of your student newspaper this week, GLBT people, there is no biblical answer. There's no such thing as biblical marriage. There's no such thing as being a biblical Christian, and there's no such thing as being a biblical church. Because you want to know why? These two people read the same Bible. They are both biblical Christians. Fred Phelps, Mother Teresa, same Bible. Now, of course, I'm picking the most extreme examples I can of, like, Christians in our cultural framework that we can understand. But both of these, like, let that sit with you for a minute. The discomfort of the fact that we share a religion with both of those persons. That both of them have opinions. I mean, Mother Teresa had, Fred Phelps has, opinions on marriage informed by the same sacred text that you and I use. That's makes us maybe a little uncomfortable, right? It's a little odd. Who's right? What's biblical marriage? The founders of the Churches of Christ in the Stone Campbell Restoration Movement, out of which this school has sprung, they wanted to found a biblical church. That's why no guitars, right? No music, non-instrumental, because there's none in the New Testament. But the Amish, they want to have a biblical church too. That's why they don't drive cars. They just use horses and buggies. And their big debate are you a New Testament Christian if you put a bright orange triangle on the back of your buggy as required by Indiana state driving laws? Right? These are the debates they have in their community about what it means to be a biblical Christian. Just like Churches of Christ people debate about whether or not we should allow instruments in our worship. Just like Episcopalians argue about whether we should let women be bishops.